Hello, thank you so much for joining us for our candidate interview series. We just want to start off by having you introduce yourself, what district you're running in, what position, and just a little background.
Thank you. Thank you for interviewing me tonight. My name is Kristine Anderson, and I'm running for Rio School District. I have an undergraduate degree in economics and a law degree from the University of San Diego. My husband and I moved up here from San Diego 17 years ago. We've been in the same neighborhood in the Rio District since then. We have two children. We have a ninth grader who's at Rio Mesa, and he attended the Rio Real dual immersion program, kinder through sixth grade, and also Rio Vista for middle school. And our daughter also went to Rio Real, and she's now in seventh grade at Rio de Valle. When my kids were at Rio Real, I did a lot of volunteering. I was in PTA for 5 years, vice president, fundraising chair, treasurer. I was on the school site council, the parent advisory committee. And also I was just in the classroom, just helping out wherever the teachers needed help. I was lucky enough to be able to do that, and I enjoyed it a lot. So that's who I am.
That's wonderful. So I want to dive more into the work that you did on PTA and how that might have influenced you to run for a political position.
Well, I really just I always did it my purpose was to make it better for the kids at the school. That was always, and usually that meant either putting on programs for them or fundraising so that we could give money to the teachers to have programs for them. To me, it was really all about making a better school experience for those kids that were there and to ease the burden on the teachers as much as we could. So that's always my focus. Like, what do the teachers need? What do the kids need?
So I think that's amazing because I remember in my classes in grade school, I would always see the helper moms that would be there helping out the teachers and helping out the students in any way that they can. And I always remember thinking that they put in so much of their time and effort just to help the students. So I think that's amazing that that's
right.
something that you've done.
I did. I never needed anyone to even say thank you. You know what I mean? It wasn't really about me. Honestly, it was just like what needs to be done. And I felt lucky enough to have the time to do it. And there was definitely a core group of parents, and we did a lot. So it was fun.
And so I just want to talk about your experience as a candidate so far. How important are issues of diversity and equity and inclusion from what you have seen in your candidacy so far?
Definitely. They're very important to me. I think just the political climate and the moment of history that we're in, they have to be important. It's definitely, obviously every child needs a good education, and that's the focus, but they can't have that good education if they're not safe and respected at school. And I think you have to promote those issues and have, a comprehensive curriculum so that they know the history of, racial discrimination in the United States. I think it's very important to me as a candidate that I work on those issues if I'm elected.
And have you had any experience working with issues specific to those areas so far in your career or just within your candidacy?
Not specifically in my career, but we're in a school district where it is 94% Hispanic in this community. So I think it's just ever present when you go to the schools in our district. That you have a wide variety socioeconomically, but you definitely have a lot of kids that are identifying as minorities. So I think that we have to just support the teachers and the administration and make sure we're getting the right curriculum that they need to learn about all these issues and so that they can feel respected.
And do you believe that it's the responsibility of the school district or just anybody in a position of power to understand what the students are facing in their school district at all?
Well, it's definitely, I think, a school board. I think it's like one of your mandates to give the kids a proper education is, number one, they have to be in a safe environment. And number two, you have to give them an engaging education. If you don't know what the issues are they're facing, then you can't do that. So if they're being bullied because they just got to this country and they don't know the language, you need to know those situations and what's going on so that you can address those issues. As the board, you're setting the vision for what you're going to accomplish while you're there. So I think you can't do that without knowing what the issues are that are important to the kids.
Definitely. And I know recently a lot of school districts are implementing different equity programming or having conferences just surrounding equity and inclusion in the district. So I want to touch on maybe your opinion on that. Do you think it's a little bit overdue, or do you think it's the right time for districts to be having these conversations at all?
I mean, there's obviously budgetary constraints always, always, especially with COVID. They're going to get harder to make those budgetary choices, but I think that it's definitely an important priority, and this is the right time to be doing that. I mean, this is the time. I mean, we can't just get complacent. Can't be like, oh, well, we learned about it for a couple months. It was important, but now we just have to worry about, distance learning, and so we can't talk about it now. I think they have to be able to do both at the same time.
I think it's great that you brought up distance learning because there's definitely a lot of issues regarding equity and inclusion with
Right.
distance learning specifically. I'd like to know your opinion on that specifically and how districts can actually help out or address equity and inclusion during the time of distance learning in that regard.
Well, so our district had a lot of good things in place already, which I think was helpful as far as like we already had one-to-one laptops for the kids. So we weren't like some districts like LA Unified where you're scrambling to get, devices into kids' hands so they can learn at home. And they pretty quickly got hotspots and they had learning packets you could pick up and supply. So they did a lot of things right, for sure. But as this is like dragged out, I think that we really have to figure out how to get the neediest kids back into classrooms or learning centers, like right away. And I think the district could do a better job of telling the parents, giving them like a reality, like if you can afford to keep your kids home, please do, because we really want to get these neediest kids back in here first. Kids that, like ELD kids that need that support, special needs kids, we need to get them back into school if it's safe to do so. And I think we need to prioritize their return over the return of, people that can keep their kids home or that want to keep their kids home. I also think, also just when we make these budgetary decisions, we have to think about what's really important and what we're going to prioritize. And so we also, I think, need to improve the reading and writing. That's something that's really kind of personal to me because I was in the classroom so much and I could see how kids would struggle with their English learning. And they have to read English in order to learn substantive subjects later on. So we have to make sure by like third grade that they're reading better and writing in English at proficient level. And then if we have the funding, get more counselors, get more social workers, get those support services in for those kinds of groups of populations of students that really need it.
I love that you touched on that because there's definitely a huge population in Ventura County that is bilingual or even trilingual, and English is their second or third language. So not being able to understand English in the classroom is definitely something that sets a lot of students back. So that's something that a lot of schools and school districts need to account for.
Right.
So on that same note, I just want to ask, what action steps do you think need to be taken in order to foster inclusive communities within your school district? So I know you kind of touched on that a little bit with English language learning, but if you have any ideas or anything like that.
Well, I mean, like reviewing the curriculum and making changes if needed or adopting the curriculum to promote more education. I've learned so much myself this summer about the racial history in our country that I didn't know before. And obviously it has to be an age appropriate level, but so curriculum reviews and, really pushing reading and writing. But I also think things like getting the parents more engaged. Like I've read our LCAP and it's like, I have 2 college degrees and I really can't tell you what it says when I read it because I don't understand it. And so I really think the LCAP plan needs to be in more common sense, lay terms for the parents to understand. And also, I think we might need to think about having district-based elections. A lot of the school districts have gone that direction. And I haven't heard anything in our district about that happening. And I really, think we need to look at the representation on the school board and make sure, if there's parents in Island Acres that need better representation, then maybe we need to break the district up and do elections that way. So.
Yeah, I love that you touched on that, that there needs to be representation for all of these families, all of these different groups in the district, to be represented in all of these different areas, whether it be the school
Right.
board or these school site councils or just anywhere in the schools, just so people feel like their voices are heard. So on the same note, yeah, as you're familiar with, our organization, Justice in the Classroom, is aiming to diversify curriculum and just basically hold school districts and schools accountable for racial literacy being taught in the classroom. So we just want to know, how will you support the most marginalized students, and how do you think that one of our 6 proposals could be implemented through your campaign or your candidacy or once you are elected?
Well, for the most marginalized students or just for all of them? I mean, I think because earlier we were talking about marginalized students, and I want to, make sure they all have learning laptops, which they pretty much do in our district, but get them back into the classrooms, get them support services for sure. I also,
Yeah,
but as far
I
as like,
guess most
sorry,
marginalized students.
yeah, but I mean, I still think so. I think we need to do that, but also, I mean, I really like all your proposals, but I think the one that stood out was the curriculum changes, because I don't think the kids are too young to start learning those lessons. And not just, just across the board, like there's not really a lot of Black kids in the schools in our district, but I think it's extremely important to know that history in the United States at whatever level is appropriate for them. But I don't think it's too young to start teaching that now. I also think that, I also like the proposal about as far as the equity training for staff and faculty, because unless we're really examining, taking a hard look at ourselves, I don't think we can like preach it to the kids, unless we're really looking in and doing our own work on ourselves and making sure our biases are in check and identifying those. Also, I just think that they don't have a lot of good strategies for dealing when these issues come up and these conflicts arise at school. I think the teachers and staff need better professional development on how to handle those situations when they actually come up. I think a lot of times it's just they're busy and it's just easier to sweep it under the rug, or they just don't want to deal with it head on when something does happen at school. So I think that they could do some equity training and get some professional development on how to actually handle those practical situations.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that the way that teachers are handling certain situations has a direct link to the school to prison pipeline, as we've seen with certain statistics across certain school districts. It's teachers are your mentors when you're in school. They're the people that you
Right.
look up to. So if teachers don't treat a situation in the way that they should be, or they aren't gentle when addressing an issue, then it can lead to this ongoing cycle, which ends up in worse situations than they started out with.
Right.
And earlier you mentioned how you noticed English language learners firsthand while you were working in the classroom. Can you elaborate more about that? Because I think that's a really interesting point.
Well, I mean, I think it was in third grade. One of my kids was in third grade, and I was actually going into the classroom 2 mornings a week just to work with a group of the lowest level English learners. And, I mean, I was trying to do my best to read books with them. We would sit in a group aside from everyone else. And it was hard. First of all, I'm not a credentialed teacher. My kids read, but I didn't teach them to read. So it was a learning curve for me. But once I kind of got the hang of it, and, I really tried to get them going, but they were definitely not at grade level. And I just felt bad. It just really broke my heart that they had so much to learn still, because like I was saying before, you can't learn your other subjects. By fourth grade in their school, 50% of their classes were in English, so it's like you can't learn those other core subjects if you don't know the underlying language. So I just it just really frustrated me and on the other hand, I would see some kids from parents I know their parents didn't speak English, and those kids were reading phenomenally in English. So anecdotally, I was just always trying to figure out, like, why is this happening? Why are some doing so well and some aren't? And when I went to a district meeting earlier in the year, they were doing a presentation, and it just they don't really seem to have a comprehensive review of why there's such a disparity in these outcomes. and what we can do to support the lower level kids.
It seems like it's something that just can't be defined by statistics or numbers on a presentation.
Right. I mean, they try to say something about attendance, but I don't know. It wasn't, I'm not the expert, but the presentation wasn't very convincing to me, and I felt like they needed to do more work, and they might need to implement a new reading program. I mean, I think they have modified it, and they do a lot of assessments of reading, but that doesn't really help you learn to read. So.
Yeah, definitely. And just as a closing note for our interview, because honestly, everything that you've said has been amazing, and I completely agree.
Thank you.
I just want to ask, is there anything that you think that the school district or the school board needs to work on right now? Like if there was one pressing issue that needed to be solved, what do you think it would be in your opinion?
Well, getting the kids back to school, that'd be the most pressing, for sure. I think that I think as a school board, though, there has to be really strong oversight of the budget decisions. And I mean, so we really do have to get kids back to school, but that's not going to happen if we don't have like the proper PPE for the teachers and, proper guidelines in place to clean everything. And then, like I was saying, get those neediest kids in first. So to me, that's the priority, is just to get us reopened, at least at some level, and get things moving again.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was so insightful, hearing your perspective on all of our issues and just our proposals as Justice in the Classroom. So just again, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope you have an amazing candidacy and wish you the best of luck.